Her words were venom spat out amid the clatter of the cafe. You can't even afford a cup of coffee. My daughter-in-law. Sophia's mocking smile, the giggles of the baristas, they carved themselves into me as I clutched the scarf I'd brought to keep her warm. A mother who had given everything to her son and his wife, now reduced to a laughingstock. But in that humiliation, I walked out in silence, while my heart whispered a vow she would regret this, and her world would crumble. Before we dive deep into this dramatic story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming tales, and leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. In the midst of a busy cafe, the words came like a stinging, purposeful slap. My 28-year-old daughter-in-law, Sophia, who exudes youthful confidence, looked directly at me and hissed, "You can't even afford a coffee here, Margaret." Her sarcastic laugh reverberated off the polished counter, while her barista colleagues chuckled and glanced back and forth between us. I stayed motionless, my hand gripping a soft gray scarf I had crocheted for her as a silent token of affection. I turned and left with the scarf still folded in my bag, a burden greater than guilt, even if my chest squeezed and my cheeks burned. I was 52 years old, a mother who had sacrificed everything for her son James and his new family, and yet Sophia saw me as nothing more than a joke. That event was more than simply humiliation. It was a spark that stoked a long-suppressed fire within me. Despite my injuries, I remained conscious, and Sophia was oblivious to the consequences of her actions. It had started innocuously enough. I picked up some yarn at a downtown craft store, the sort where the proprietor still knows your name while out on errands. I spontaneously crafted the scarf for Sophia with the hope that it would aid us in overcoming our increasing distance. During family meals, she would proudly display her title, which she earned while running a trendy cafe in the heart of Portland. She had bragged about her team and her vision for the establishment, and I had nodded and smiled while omitting the years I had spent owning my own gift shop before selling it to support her and James as they began their lives. I intended to surprise her by sneaking in during a lull, giving her the scarf, and perhaps even having a little giggle. I entered a scene that would haunt me instead. The cafe's slick tables were crowded with laptop-wielding patrons, and the air smelled of ambition and roasted beans. With the scarf weighing down my bag, I waited for Sophia to see me standing close to the counter. Two baristas, one with shiny manicured nails and the other with a tight ponytail, were talking to her as she leaned against the rear bar. She went back to her pals, her chatter drowning out the sound of the espresso machine, but I managed to catch her eye and see the spark of recognition. She remarked loud enough for me to hear, "Oh, that's just my mother-in-law, always popping in sweet as sugar, but she probably can't afford a coffee here." Then came the harsh theatrical laugh, with her companions joining in as if it were a special club I'd never be able to join. "The last time she paid in coins," she continued. "I swear coins." My cheeks flushed, as though the room had tilted and my breath caught. I felt vulnerable and exposed in front of people who were unaware that I had paid for their couch refrigerator and wedding deposit. I prepared dinners when Sophia worked late, cleaned their kitchen when they were too exhausted to do it, and watched their daughter Lily 3 evenings a week when childcare was out of reach. I had never shown gratitude or raised my voice, but to her, I was nothing more than an elderly, weary woman who could be made fun of. I nodded, as though I approved of her brutality, and left my pulse racing but my legs solid. The world faded into a soft hum as I sat on a seat outside the scarf, still in my bag, and watched buses go by. I didn't yell or weep. I simply sat there feeling the pain of what she had said, etch something new into me, a firm, uncompromising determination to regain the honor she had attempted to take away. I placed a cup of chamomile tea on the table that evening while I was by myself in my tiny apartment. The tea's harshness reflected the pain in my chest. I was made fun of as I took the scarf out of my bag, its delicate strands serving as a reminder of the love I had given to James and Sophia. I considered every option, including staying up with Lily when they couldn't, paying their electricity bills silently, and selling my store to pay off their debts. Sophia didn't simply brush me off. She did it with confidence, as though James would accept her statements and I wouldn't argue. More painful than her laughing was the notion of my 30-year-old son, whom I had raised by myself, after his father abandoned him, supporting her silence. I found it difficult to sleep as my thoughts were consumed by a singular realization: I am not the woman she perceives me to be, and I refuse to allow her to dictate my identity. The morning after Sophia's laughing broke my heart. I woke up to a silence that was more like the stillness before a torrent bursts its banks than a state of tranquility. The gray scarf was still folded in my drawer, a mute testimony to my pain, and the chamomile tea from the previous night remained cold in its cup in my quiet apartment. I felt the weight of Sophia's words settle into something new as I sat at my kitchen table, my hands following the grain of the wood, not just pain, but a summons to action. Margaret, a 52-year-old mother who had sacrificed everything for her son James and his family, was ridiculed as unworthy. I wasn't useless, though. I could establish a new life since I had already built one. Sophia believed she had weakened me, but all she had done was rekindle a fire that I had let burn for too long. I didn't go straight to James. To ensure that my words wouldn't break under the pressure of my rage, I needed the night to let the pain subside. That morning, with a rock-solid voice, I contacted him and invited him to visit. He was halfway to somewhere else when he came at lunchtime, his 30-year-old body crowding the doorway, his gaze preoccupied. "James, I visited Sophia's Café yesterday," I began as I poured us coffee and took a seat across from him. In front of her employees, she made fun of me and said, "I can't afford a coffee." He didn't glance up. Instead, he rubbed his cup restlessly. I spoke it again, more slowly, like a pebble dropped into quiet water. "James," she made me feel ashamed. I stood there listening quite loudly to her. His expression was a mixture of avoidance and tiredness as he sighed and leaned back. "Come on, Mom, she didn't mean it that way." Sophia's sense of humor is keen. "You take things too personally." His decision to turn away, rather than his doubts about me, made my heart sink. Sophia walked in with her iced coffee and her phone blazing with alerts before I could reply. "What's the matter?" With a light tone and piercing gaze, as if she was familiar with the battlefield, she asked. James looked back and forth between us, his shoulders stiff as he waited for one of us to give way. I didn't say anything since I wanted her to talk first. Sophia continued. "Your mom misunderstood," without glancing at me. Her voice sounded flawless. "I didn't suggest she didn't have enough money for coffee. I simply said that she doesn't often order anything." James's eyes flitted with skepticism, but he didn't confront her. "The girls were just asking if she wanted a drink." It was a thin, brazen lie. He rubbed his neck and remarked, "Perhaps it was bad timing." "Let's avoid making it a reality." With her grin acting as a barrier, Sophia put her arm around his. "Baby, your mom is overly sensitive." The room was heavy with their disdain, and I gasped. "It's not my fault she takes things personally." James didn't defend me or correct her. All he said was, "Can we drop it?" I nodded in a forceful yet quiet voice. "Yes, James. We'll drop it." After washing my cup and placing it on the rack, I walked out of their flat, our quiet being more audible than any disagreement. As I walked home without my gloves, the cold stung my hands and served as a poignant reminder of my lucidity. Sophia didn't only make fun of me. She viewed me as a danger, someone who needed to be subdued before I could threaten her authority over James. James, my son, whom I had raised through hard knees and restless nights, had granted her permission. Comfort, not malice, drove her to choose the path that didn't disturb his reality. Her laughing was not as painful as that subtle, unsaid betrayal. I had given them everything, including my time, money, and love, and they had made me into a laughingstock a lady who only paid in pennies and a laughingstock. I wasn't that woman, though. No more. I had 8 years of experience running a gift business, carefully wrapping gifts and memorizing the backstories of my patrons. To support James and Sophia, I had sold it and invested my funds in their wedding apartment and overall well-being. Without voicing any complaints, I had prepared their meals, paid their bills, and watched their daughter Lily. Prior to that, my buddy Clara and I had invested in a bakery, which started off quietly in her garage and eventually expanded to 2 successful locations. They didn't know I was hiding part of myself, not out of shame, but because they never asked. Poor old Margaret, who clung to thrift shop clothing and coupons, was believed by Sophia to recognize me. I was prepared to prove to her that she was mistaken. With firm fingertips, I opened my laptop that evening and retrieved the bakery's financial records. My portion was sufficient to alter the course of events, and Clara and I had created something tangible and lucrative. I wanted respect, the type Sophia couldn't dismiss with laughter, not retribution. I began investigating her cafe by looking through public documents, internet reviews, and anything else that would provide further information. The establishment was facing difficulties due to late rent, a high employee turnover rate, and an unupdated social media profile. Then I discovered a private listing that was only available to those who knew where to search. Desperate to move on, the owner was hoping to sell quietly. Like a river determining its route, my pulse pounded with confidence rather than enthusiasm. I had the necessary funds, unwavering determination, and a plan that was taking shape like the stars in the evening sky. Sophia believed she had won, but I was prepared to fight, and she had merely shown me the battlefield. Like a knitted blanket, the darkness encircled me, its silence containing secrets I had kept for far too long. With the laptop open to the cafe's sale advertisement and a single paragraph that seemed like a doorway, "Owner seeks discreet buyer eager to move on my flat," was softly lit by lamps. My heart pounded steadily, not with rage, but with a winter morning clarity. Not only was I upset, but I was also determined to regain the things Sophia had attempted to take away from me: my dignity, my position, and my power, after she laughed and cruelly dismissed me in front of her baristas. They ridiculed a woman who had dedicated her entire life to her son James and his family. I was more than nothing, though. I had founded companies, brought up a son by myself, and owned stock in a bakery that prospered quietly. Sophia made the error of not knowing it and not knowing me. The following morning, with a voice as serene as a riverbed, I phoned Clara. I stated, "We must sell the second bakery location." Across the line, she halted, gasping for air. "Are you certain, Margaret?" Even though she couldn't see, I nodded. "That place is your pride. Clara, I need the money for something greater." Her voice was warm, and she simply trusted without question. "All right, let's give the broker a call today." We had previously had bids. Our bakery, which started in her garage and is now a profitable business with 2 locations, was a quiet success. While selling one wouldn't ruin us, it would free us enough cash to make a huge difference. I haven't yet told her my idea. It was still developing, a seed taking root, but I understood it was about standing tall and proving to Sophia and James that I wasn't the darkness they had painted me as. At a cafe that smelled of grease and promise, I met Tony, a business broker I had known from my days working at gift shops. His eyes glowed when he recognized me, and he spoke quickly and sharply. "Margaret from Patch and Paper. Have you returned to the game?" I smiled slightly but confidently and said, "Perhaps." I passed him the cafe listing and saw his eyebrows rise. "I'm looking at something small and discreet." This location, high turnover, poor management, and late rent are all contributing factors. The owner is in a dire situation. "Have you got the money?" I gave a nod. It would be more than plenty for my bakery share to clear in a few days. I responded, "Hold it for me until Friday." Sensing a bargain, he smiled. "Wire a deposit, and it's yours." I transferred $5,000 that evening without hesitation or fuss. My motivation was assurance, like placing a stone on a road you've traveled 1,000 times rather than thrill. I explored more of the cafe's crevices. Online evaluations presented a negative image, citing workers who appeared checked out expensive beverages and chilly service. In a show of desperation, a job posting had appeared and then disappeared. Sophia's management was a house of cards, flashy title little substance, and the owner, Mike, was sinking. As customers waited and baristas struggled, I imagined her striding behind the counter laughing at me, her lanyard swinging like a badge of dominance. She believed she was untouchable, but I halted the tide, and she was standing on sand. I kept Sophia and James in the dark. Clara, who saw the change in me, was the only person I told. "You're different," she murmured over coffee, looking into my eyes. I nodded and sipped my cup, feeling grounded by the warmth. Not angry, just awake. I reflected on James, particularly his decision to accept Sophia's lie and his silence after I informed him about the cafe event. Not only did he not stand up for me, but he failed to see me not the woman who had made a bakery out of nothing, who had rocked his daughter Lily to sleep, and who had sold her store to pay for his life. He allowed Sophia to portray me as a burden and a relic which went beyond what she said. I wasn't a relic, though. I was prepared to remind them both that I was a survivor and a builder. On Friday, I met Mike after work at the cafe. He was in his mid-40s with weary eyes and a surrendering handshake. "You're the mother-in-law of Sophia." He questioned me with an amazed expression on his face. I nodded, my face composed. "I'm serious." We sat at a booth in the corner, the cafe dark, the smell of old coffee thick in the air. Contracts with suppliers' salary records and notices of past due rent were among the documents he put out. In a hushed voice, he acknowledged, "It's a mess. It was enjoyable once, but now it's simply stressful." With the pen solid in my hand and the money transmitted from my bakery sale, I signed the documents. "You want it? It's yours, inventory, customer list, all of it." I had the keys, a fresh folder, and a strategy as clear as a mountain stream by twilight. Sophia believed she had triumphed and that I had been buried by her laughter. However, I was getting up, and on Monday, she would see a lady she had never seen before, one who owned the land she was standing on. Monday morning surged like a steady, inexorable wave, propelling me toward a reckoning I had fashioned in secret. My apartment felt purposeful as I got up early and dressed carefully, wearing a navy cardigan, polished trousers, and new black shoes that clicked quietly on the floor, the sound of a lady who knew her way. I was no longer the lady who paid in pennies and put up with Sophia's laughter, nor was I the unseen mother whom she had made fun of. I had a folder of truth under my arm, the deed in my name, and the keys to her cafe in my palm. Sophia would view me now as the one who made the difference, not as a shadow. I arrived at the cafe before the sun rose, the streets of Portland still shrouded in fog. Former owner Mike was present to provide the last paperwork, and his face was etched with relief as he showed me the POS system and the espresso machine. He patted the counter like an old friend and said, "Margaret, you're going to surprise people." He departed after saying, "This place needs someone like you." The gloomy light left me standing alone, the aroma of coffee grinds and opportunity filling the air. I waited until the staff slowly arrived, yawning, checking their phones, and nodding courteously to the new consultant they thought I was. I also straightened the stools and made sure the supplies were in order. With a steady heart and eager hands, I calmly allocated them stations and promised modifications later in the week. Sophia arrived late as usual at 8:12 a.m., holding a phone in one hand and an iced coffee in the other, her huge sunglasses atop her head like a crown. Her handbag swinging as if she ruled the world, she laughed with a young barista. Then she came to the counter, saw me, and glanced up. Her body froze like a deer detecting danger as her eyes met mine and her grin wavered. "Margaret, why are you here?" She attempted to seem nonchalant, but her voice broke at the edges, showing how uncomfortable she was. I didn't flinch or smile. Did Mike not inform you ownership changed hands? She opened her lips to argue, but nothing came out. I'm the new owner. She gave a sharp blink. You're kidding. I shook my head, my eyes unwavering. I'm not. She looked to the barista next to her for support, but the girl was too busy refilling cups to speak. Then Mike's voice broke through. His timing was impeccable, as he had come back for his misplaced keys. I'm glad you got to meet Margaret. She is now in command. Be kind to her. He waved, took his keys, and left. Like a flood striking a dam, Sophia's face made a visceral collision of astonishment, fright, and pride. I take it that this is a joke. She spoke more loudly, her voice shaking. With an equal tone, I gave her the agenda for the day. Today, you are on register. Her breath caught as she glanced at the page and then back at me. You missed pre-shift, so catch up. You're not serious. I look into her eyes without flinching. I run this place. No longer. The personnel paused when the air changed their gaze, brief yet telling. A barista concealed a smirk as she coughed. Sophia grabbed her coffee as her cheeks heated and her sunglasses slipped. Did you purchase a whole café just to make me seem bad? She spoke sharply, but there was a break in her armor when her voice faltered. I gave myself permission to smile a little clearly, but not cruelly. I purchased it because it required improved administration. It just so happens that you work here. Her eyes scanned the room for allies as she opened and closed her mouth. No one showed up. With their attention on their task, and not on her, the baristas continued to steam milk and wipe off countertops. As I turned to face the office, she stood there with the schedule crumpled in her palm. I didn't turn around when I heard her murmur something low and resentful. Instead of yelling, I used the silent weight of truth to make the argument. She had believed me helpless, a lady without coffee money, but here she was, standing in my café with her title taken away from her, and the keys in my pocket stifling her laughing. That day, I began to transform the café. I brought in pastries from Clara's bakery, replaced the cheap syrups Sophia had overordered, and reorganized the tip pool so there were no favorites. I made more today than I did all last week, a young barista barely 20 whispered to me later. I nodded, took notes, and continued on. A woman wearing a knit scarf mentioned that the shop seemed warmer, like someone cares. I thanked her, feeling my heart lift, but I remained concentrated, cleaning the pastry case, checking inventory, and performing the tasks I'd always performed, quiet, steady, and genuine. Sophia stared, her movements clipped her shoulders taut. She didn't give up or go abruptly, but her confidence was eroding, and her sparkle had vanished. She believed that her words had buried me, but I had created something more resilient that she was unable to dismiss with laughter. I sensed James in the distance, torn between his quiet and his wife's falsehoods, even though he hadn't phoned or texted. I didn't need his blessing just yet. I had the café, the respect I was gaining from the workers, and a truth that was more powerful than Sophia's derision. I was eager to see how far it would take me now that the tide had changed. The days that followed my assertion revealed that the café developed like a river, finding its true and steady path, while alleviating the burden of James's silence and Sophia's laughter. As a mother and a woman who had made a name for herself in a society that attempted to minimize her, Margaret, suddenly stood higher. Fresh pastries from Clara's bakery, a tip pool that cheered up the workers and patrons who stayed longer with warmer grins, made the café buzz with new energy. Sophia's swagger had vanished, and her silence spoke more than her previous claims, yet she was still working her shifts with her apron knotted tight. It wasn't necessary for me to gloat. The deed in my name, the keys in my pocket, and the barista's admiration for me were plenty. I was prepared to let the balance settle after fighting for my dignity with the strength of a woman who had learned to build in silence, not with rage. My canvas was a café. I hung local artwork, which included simple prints that caught the light, repainted a wall in a soft sage color, and replaced the flickering light bulbs. I educated the employees, teaching them to use their names when greeting clients, to carefully wipe off countertops, and to view their employment as more than just a job. Ellie, a barely 20-year-old barista with purposeful eyes, began staying late to study inventory. One evening she said, "You make it feel like we're building something." And I nodded, my heart full, but my words sparse. She reminded me of the woman I had been before Sophia made fun of me, and before James rejected me, a builder, not a shadow. Even the customers noticed. An elderly guy with a clean but tattered coat left a gratuity that said, "This place feels like home now." Thank you. I placed it beside the deed in my binder as a reminder of what I had taken back. Like a specter of her old self, Sophia navigated her transformations. She didn't give up or snap, but there was a glimmer of something new, not defiance, but awareness in her eyes. That Monday, she had actually seen me standing behind the counter, her life completely transformed and her title stripped away. It wasn't necessary for me to terminate her employment. Every shift she worked under my supervision taught her a valuable lesson, and each cup she poured served as a reminder that the lady she had mocked was now in charge. One day, when I caught her staring at the schedule board with her name next to Ellie's, I paid her no special attention. She stood there, mouth-clenched, fingers twitching without turning. Silently, I walked by and shut the front door, allowing her to struggle with her own image. A week later, James called in a quiet, cautious voice, as if he were treading carefully on delicate terrain. "Please let us know why you didn't mention your wealth, Mom. What can you tell us about the cafe and the bakery?" He had never considered asking and had never seen me beyond the food I prepared and the money I spent, so it hurt more what it revealed than what it requested. The phone felt chilly against my ear while I leaned against the kitchen counter. "James, you didn't ask. You allowed Sophia to define who I was." A heavy but sincere silence hovered between us. At last he remarked, "She's having trouble." The 20-second video, which has received 500,000 views, showed Sophia's tantrum and her voice breaking as she accused me of embarrassing her. I had seen it. "That video? It's everywhere." The comments branded her entitled and spoiled, but I hadn't shared or encouraged it. "That's her burden," I stated steadily, "not mine." He didn't argue, and for the first time, I felt like he was listening to me as a woman with her own reality, rather than as a mother trying to appease me. The following Sunday, he came alone with a bag of apples from the market that I had taught him to select, firm, tart, and perfect for pies. We chatted about little things like Lily's new words, his most recent project, and how the cafe now smelled of cinnamon while sitting on my porch in the cold autumnal air. It was a new and brittle bridge based on the facts I had requested, but it wasn't an apology yet. It wasn't necessary for me to push. I had faith that the road would hold, and James was making his way back. Sophia remained, her presence softer, her changes quieter. She gave me a tray of cups one evening as we were closing, and her eyes met mine for a longer than normal period. With a quiet voice that was nearly drowned out by the dishwasher's hum, she murmured, "I didn't know. Regarding you." It wasn't an apology, but it was near a rift in the wall she had constructed. Everything revolved around the bakery. She winced, but I didn't dispute it. I simply tied her apron and continued. I nodded, put the plate down, and added, "You didn't look." I had earned my peace through years of sacrifice, the bravery to own a cafe, and the ability to stand where she had laughed, so I didn't need her to feel sorry for me. The cafe prospered as a place of equilibrium as well as a business. The environment was lighter, like a home where trust was genuine. Staff turnover ceased, and consumers came back. I began drawing again, this time for myself rather than the cafe. Perhaps I would open a craft store like the one I had adored, or perhaps Clara and I would open a new bakery. I ate better, slept better, and dug through old notebooks from my days working in gift shops, their pages brimming with potential. On Sundays, Clara would visit, and while we planned, imagined, and created, her laughter filled my kitchen. One evening, with loving eyes, she declared, "You're back." As I sipped my tea, I grinned and realized she was correct. Sophia never again threw her title like a crown or laughed at me. She worked, I took the lead, and the world got stronger, more equitable, and more truthful instead of ending. The scarf remained in my drawer as a memento of my decision to get up, rather than of suffering. James and I were slowly and carefully repairing our relationship, much like constructing a basket one reed at a time. Margaret, I also stopped being silent. I was the lady who transformed a derision into a monument and battled for respect using the calm strength of a well-built life, rather than yelling. I stood on the banks of the river entire, and unbroken, prepared for whatever was ahead. The river had calmed down its current, powerful. What do you think about this story? If you've ever felt belittled, used, or betrayed by your own family, you probably understand all too well the pain this mother went through. It wasn't just about losing money. It was the kind of betrayal that tightens your chest and makes your heart ache. But just like her, we all have the right to say enough, to stand up and reclaim our worth and our voice. If you found this story thought-provoking, please share it with your friends or family. Someone out there might need this reminder that they deserve respect. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories, real-life lessons that can be raw and painful, but need to be told. Thank you for watching and listening.